I have this interview on Friday, which is going to be targeting specifically for balance questions and class rework questions. And on top of that, I wanted to have since I'm in this opportunity or have this opportunity, I wanted to talk to content creators that mainly make content for Last Epoch, like yourself, give you guys some time in the spotlight, if you will. But most importantly, make sure that if you guys have any specific questions that you guys want to bring in, I was going to do my best to try to weave them in. And you wrote to me on Discord earlier saying you had a question regarding the balancing of MG versus COF, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's
Yeah.
probably what people expect of me is like the COF guy. So
Yeah. No, I'm a
on
big
theme.
COF fan as well. So the problem with that question in general is that it doesn't really fit the theme of the interview itself. So what I did do is I took that as a first question on a Q&A to make sure that your question gets into the interview. So I'll make sure the question is going to get asked as a plan at least, but it won't be in any of the sub header categories during the actual interview itself, since it doesn't fit any of those categories that I'm covering, right? But I did just smack it in a Q&A at the very end. So that means I'll basically cover your question first there. That's kind of how I'm going to tackle that, unless you have another question you'd prefer me to ask instead.
Uh, I don't know. None on the top of my head. I'd have to
That's
think
fair.
about that. But yeah,
No, that's
that
fine.
was the biggest one for me. It's just like
Yeah.
balance.
And I don't mind this question either. I think it's a good question. I mean, it's definitely um, an important topic to cover. I mean, MG has always been like the super high power, easy access to everything. And now they're giving us even more tools to work with. And working out, or at least hearing how they intend to balance this moving forward, will be quite fruitful for everyone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially like COF versus MG is a little bit complicated because I mean, obviously COF needs more items, right, to compete with MG. Like that's the only way you can do it when you have trade.
Mm,
But then if you add new stuff and it doesn't interact, right? Like it gets you end up with like a weird situation where potentially COF just becomes irrelevant.
yeah,
So yeah, that's my worry.
that's fair. I mean, we're also in a position where like COF is supposed to be this longer kind of gameplay of enjoyment. You farm your own stuff. There's a lot of target farming, so there's that argument as well. Maybe they don't want them to be perfectly balanced. I mean, you have the same thing in like PoE, so self fund versus trade, right? You don't even have anywhere near the level of efficiency that COF brings to the table. It's just bare bone playing. Here, have fun. You got to get lucky to get your shit kind of approach, whereas COF is actually giving us tools to work with. But it will be fun to hear
Yeah.
what ESG has to say about it, because maybe they're happy with that approach or having this middle ground. But if they are fine with looking into having a better structured balance between the two in terms of power scaling, then yeah, maybe that's what they'll say. But we'll bring it up and we'll see what happens. That question aside, how are you liking the teaser so far?
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff. Sometimes I end up with having a little bit of information I probably shouldn't have. I'm not in the CT, but
All right.
like it's like trying to balance the excitement, right? Like there's so much stuff just coming all at once. Like the set thing ended up being like it sounds really crazy, and you have the like the whole Weaver thing modifying your end game. I guess the analogy was kind of like with PoE, you have the Atlas thing.
Hmm.
Just like fine tuning your experience, I think is what was really lacking, and they're really like hitting home on that end game like versatility, like how you play is sort of up to you.
Hmm. I really like that as well. Like giving player agency. It's one of the things that I keep complaining about. And when it comes to quality of life stuff in other games, I mean, the prime example would be the map overlay in D4, for example. And they're like, no, but what about immersion? I'm like, just give us the option to turn that on or off. Like, just so the people that want it can play with it. Same reason, like EHD has been very good at that. For example, they're introducing a feature to allow the crafting shards they pick up to be moved immediately into your soaked up, invisible currency. But you have the player agency to say, well, I want to click that transfer button. I don't know who's the psychopaths are that would want that, but they give the players the player agency to control that aspect of the game. And I think that more of those things is beneficial across the board. No one's going to be upset if they give the players the control to play how they want to. And then, weaves into the Weaver's tree, if you will, or the PoE Atlas passive skill tree, like you mentioned as well. And it's not just elevating or juicing up your maps or elevating the enjoyment of the maps. It's like you mentioned as well, like directly controlling what type of content you want. Specifically for me, it's like being able to either lean into arenas or completely remove them from existence in your gameplay. Like like it is small, but small stuff like that makes a huge difference in my opinion.
Yeah, actually,
Um,
it's kind of funny. Sorry,
no,
I
go
was
ahead.
just saying like the shard thing you mentioned. Like, I think one of the big things between comparing like EHG and like grinding gear and all that, right,
Mm,
is like the shard thing was one that was people have been complaining about it for years, and it's like on Reddit, and they had their opinions, right, of like, well, you don't have the experience or it doesn't feel like an item or so on. But like, unlike a lot of the other studios, they kind of listen and they'll change their mind. Like they're willing to be like, okay, we'll try this out, right?
mm. That's fair. No, I definitely agree with that as well. But you said you don't have access to the CT. Is that something that you've chosen, or you just lack of time, or because I thought most of the LE creators had access to it at this point?
Uh, I mean, I've been asked before, like directly, like, is this something that like I should be doing or if I want to do? And I kind of just didn't really put a whole lot of thought. Like for one, there's the time investment. Like when I
Yeah.
have like full-time job and all that stuff, right? It's hard to also do this plus do other things. And the other thing too is having information makes it really hard for me to make like hype content without, spilling beans, right? Like it's hard to
Yep.
keep what's what I know that I shouldn't know versus what I know that like everybody knows, and then kind of like balance that. I don't want to be like in a weird spot.
Yep. No, I feel you on the weird spots sense there. I can tell you that much. Every time a question's brought up, I have to like spend 10 minutes thinking about what can I say and how can I say it before I even can answer the question to make sure I'm not breaking NDA. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. But yeah, it's a lot of time required for it as well. The stuff that I have experienced have been very, very cool so far. But it is fair to point out that the CT testers don't have access to everything. It's not like the entire content, everything that we're getting is going to be fully explored and what do you call it, solved on launch, which I think is a really good thing as well. At the same time, but I definitely see what you're saying there. But how long have you been playing Last Epoch for?
Probably not actually that long compared to some of the other content folks. I think
Mhm.
I started a little bit before 1.0. It was just sort of playing around and figuring things out, and then 1.0 dropped, and I just went hard and put in a few thousand hours since then. So kind of playing catch up.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean that's kind of like where the thing really started. I've been around since Kickstarter Alpha, and I mean the stuff we did back then is like very bare bone and completely irrelevant in the current state of the game. So I think that you came in a very good time frame where the last epoch really got started with the things you got to experience is how the game was based. That was like the foundation of the game that you got to experience from the very get go. So I mean that's a perfect time to get started. I think so. That's really nice. But you said you're a COF fan. Like, is there any specific type of builds or something like that that you personally enjoy to play more than anything, or like you're just a COF fan and you play whatever you want for this current season, or you're like, yeah, how do you play?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the context around that is like COF has kind of always been my thing. Like I originally played a lot of PoE,
Mhm.
and the trade sort of turned me off over time. I was like, this is not something I really like.
In
So
PoE?
then, yeah, yeah. So then Last Epoch had their whole item faction thing. I was like, whoa, sign me up, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I mean, you asked about the builds specifically. I
Mm.
think to me, builds are more of like a means to an end rather than like my primary focus. So it's a little bit different than a lot of other creators
Mhm.
where like I'll focus on finding really, really strong interactions and just like min maxing the shit out of that, right? Just like as far as I can go with like one specific thing, just full ADHD, right?
Mm.
Uh, and then that's where I end up with like builds or Frostclaw is kind of like my thing for the last couple seasons where I picked it up because I thought it looked really cool. And then I just kept finding like new ways to make it better or like interact with other things or just like really specific details. Like if you aim in a certain way with a certain node in the skill tree to like ricochet back and you can like get 60% more damage just by like intentionally missing. Like there's so many really crazy things.
It's
But yeah,
funny that you
that's
mentioned that because like the word on the street, well, the street being the Twitch chat, but I guess that is a street. has been every time we brought up your name, people have been saying that you're the master of Frost Claws. Would you say that's pretty accurate then? Because I haven't heard that when you were talking about the ricocheting at all. So, I mean, it seems like you got that skill, nailed down to its very minute detail.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. There's like different sort of like subsets of how you can play the skill. Like there's so many different things. Like you can do DOT, you can do the frostbite, you can do ignite or whatever.
Mm.
Nova is still a thing. Sorcerer with the spark trick. Like there's a lot of different ways. But yeah, I would say I probably have the most time into Frostclaw as a skill.
I mean, a good time frame. It's been a really high performing build as well for quite some time now as well. Granted, the last season has lasted for quite some time. You sent me an Excel file or a docs file. What was this? Oh my god! What am I looking at?
Yeah, so I guess I'm also kind of like the spreadsheet guy of Last Epoch. I don't know if the analogy is accurate, but I have people compare it to like PoE's Grimro.
Yes, it's
I'm
pretty
not sure
fucking
if that's like a fair.
accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, I mean, I know you're a big COF guy, so like for me, going into COF is sort of part of the fun of that is min-maxing it and understanding like, okay, so what lens is the best in this scenario? What uh, prophecies do you want? What events do you want? Like which things should you exclude or which areas should you run to get the most prophecy procs, corruptions, get, like all that stuff. These are all questions that I had, and like towards trying to maximize how you play COF. That's kind of where this whole set of, I don't know how many spreadsheets or like pages are on this spreadsheet now. It's a lot, but that's how this kind of was born.
Holy shit! I just saw the pages when you mentioned it as well. How long did it take you to make this? Good lord!
I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because like it started out as like one page. I'm like, documenting all the different prophecies, and then I'm like, oh well, it's not random. There's like a preset, so I like put them all in. It's like here they are. Here's the cost. Here's the cost if you have the lens, and that's like quite a few days building that, and then you just like add another one. Someone asks like, how do you calculate the crit chance of Frostclaw or the mana cost? I'm like, okay, I'll make a sheet. Like, what about LP or what about like your data from a test? Well, I guess I'll make a sheet, right? And just like over time, it builds up, and this is where we are now.
It's so funny checking this out because I remember playing PoE back in the day when we didn't have access to Path of Building, and people talked about like mind over matter calculations and stuff like that, which is essentially just basic algebra. So I did something like this with Excel files as well for the community back in PoE, but that was like less than a fraction of what I'm looking at right now. But it reminds me of that at least. It's really fun. And then we got PUB, and someone in chat said there's no PUB in LE, so Frozen Sentinel made one in Excel.
I
This
mean,
is so
kind of,
cool.
yeah.
I mean, this is a
Just bit
gold
it one
mine.
bit at a time.
Yeah. Holy shit, this is
Yeah.
dedication. And you do this for fun?
Yeah. I mean, I like math, I like numbers. I think there's sort of like a correlation between ARPG players and like really nerdy type spreadsheet people, right?
Well,
Like
you're not
people
wrong.
love this in this genre.
Oh yeah, for sure. You said you like math. Like I have an easy time with math, but I don't like it. I think it's boring as fuck, but I have an easy time with it. So I guess that's good. But you like math? So I have to ask, what do you do for a living? What's your full time job? You said
I'm a software engineer, so
software
like this
engineer.
sort of it sort of fits, right?
It sort of fits. Yeah. Holy shit. Well, I'm sorry about the coffee. I'm definitely going to be bookmarking this. This is a gold mine of information, especially for COF. Holy shit, dude. This is crazy. God damn. So it's safe to say that you're looking to play Frost Claws in the next season, or are you having other plans?
I mean, it's kind of funny actually. Like my YouTube comments are always like a big mix of like over time, I have a lot of people who really like Frostclaw as well, and they always want like the next iteration of that. So that's like kind of one group of people. And then the other group of people is like, well, you've been playing Frostclaw for over a year now. Like we kind of want to see some new stuff, right? And it's
Mm-mm.
like it's very divided. And like I kind of want something new, but also like just from what I've seen, I already have a few ideas of some potential OP interactions that I don't really want to like, drop any huge. Like, the patch notes aren't ready, or like they could still kill some stuff, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Holy moly, this is crazy. All right, so I mean, let's talk about the teaser a bit. I mean, you have not played the CT, you know some things, so that makes it a lot easier to ask questions because otherwise we don't have to sit there for 10 minutes and figure out what we can and can't say. So, based on the teaser information that we've seen so far, if you had to pick like one thing that stands out the most that you're most excited about, what would that be?
That's a hard one. Honestly, like there's so much. I'll do an unpopular take. I'll say WASDA. No, but
Really?
seriously though, I mean it's exciting after PoE 2. Like
Yeah,
how it feels is just it's really good. Like the carpal tunnel kind of feels a lot better.
that's
Um,
fair.
but yeah, I think I'll say the endgame crafting in general. I think excites me the most. The set
Hmm.
items are. I hope that they open up build variety where you don't just look at a planner and it's a bunch of legendaries, right? So
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'd like to see.
you talk
Uh,
about like set
there's
items and champion affixes then.
yeah, like a lot of these things kind of go together where they're mutually exclusive with the legendaries. So you can't have like you can't slam those into a legendary.
Yeah.
So that means that you're sort of weighing pros and cons, right? Of like, do I want an exalt with all this other cool stuff, bunch of T7s and whatever, or do I want like a really good unique base with a slam on it?
Mm-mm. No, for sure, for sure. I mean, it also weaves very well into you being a COF kind of guy as well, like the crafting. Like I'm in the same boat, being very excited about the crafting systems, specifically because I do prefer to play COF over trade for the most part. I mean, I dwell in trade every now and then, but COF is just it elevates the enjoyment so much. That's how I feel about it.
I guess one question for you on COF specifically, like how deep did you go into like endgame min maxing or like the whole favor farm thing?
That would depend on the first seasonal round. I went very hard. The problem I had that I encountered was the build I was playing was not a meta build, and I needed a very specific set of mods on my belt, on a very specific belt base, spider silk, I think it was for the rest. And I spent like almost 2 weeks grinding for this goddamn fucking belt, man, and I never dropped it. And that led me to go trade league on the next seasonal launch instead, and that just killed my enjoyment so fast. I was done within a week, and I had min maxing was easy and all those things. It just there was very little enjoyment from playing merchant guilds compared to CUF. But that's as far as my min maxing goes in terms of how much I played on CUF and MG. Not anywhere near what you've done with a spreadsheet. I did not utilize that. I did whatever I thought was fun to engage with, and I target farmed what I wanted to do. Kind of like the idea behind COF is how I engage with it more so than min maxing it in terms of numerical uh, nerdy approach, if you will.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head of like exalted items. I think were the pain point of COF, especially if you care about the base type, which if you're using the item as an exalt, you obviously do, right?
Hmm.
So the issue with that, I think, for COF was unique items. When you look at prophecies, the favor cost per item is pretty much the same as an exalted item. But like when you're running maps or you're, doing anything, you drop way more exalts than you drop uniques, right? Like most of the game, it's balanced towards, yeah, you need a lot of exalts to get the affix that you want because it's such a low weighting, right? But then for whatever reason, uniques prophecies are so cheap, you just end up dropping like hundreds of uniques. You slam it because you don't care about the base type, and then there you go. Here's your gear set full of legendaries.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm. Yeah, that's a fair take on it. Have you played a lot of Sentinel at all, or you just been super hard on the Frost Claws?
A Sentinel was actually the first class I ever played. Like you probably know that Sentinel's like not the best, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a joke. But yeah, like when I saw last Epoch, I went in completely blind. I was like, man, the Sentinel looks cool. I'm gonna do like a big bonk. I did Forge Strike, like hit based Forge Strike. That was my first ever build. I was
Yeah.
just bonking things with which is probably like one of the worst possible ways to play the game. It's just terrible scope, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, no, the hit space with it.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
not.
think
It
I
was
could
not
picture
good.
myself doing that.
The
No, they have
theme
a
was there. The damage, no.
yeah, no, it does a lot of damage. That's for sure. I'm actually looking at leaning into the idea of seasonal starting with Forge Guard minions, though, for the Forge weapons and the Manifest armor. I think that's going to be fun to do. Quite excited for that. But minions
Well,
in
you
general
have
needs a lot
the.
of work. Sorry?
I was just saying, you have that inside info. You have some juice on the Forge Guard.
Well, yeah, not much I can say, though. I do want them to make a lot of sorry, I want them to answer quite a lot of questions about minions, though. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair. The
So,
pathing and all that stuff.
yeah, we'll see how that goes and what kind of answers we get. And but they have said that they're making a acolyte rework for season 3 as well. So I think that there's going to be a lot of minion focus on this third season. So I don't think we're going to see too much of it in season 2 at least.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes in general. You watched the previous interviews as well. Is there anything like special or anything specific rather that you're looking to see from the upcoming interviews, either from mine, which is covering balance stuffs, and I'm not sure what the Frosty LaRue and Aaron, as well as Talking to Tribe, what they're planning to do with their topics. Obviously, we were given these topics by EHG to how our interviews or what type of topic our interviews are going to cover. Is there anything specific that you're looking to hear them answer outside of the MG versus COF?
I guess to me, like one of the most interesting bits is how the end game will play. Like obviously there's the Weaver stuff, which I mean we're gonna get answers when we get them, right? Like some stuff is still under wraps.
Yeah.
But just like on a more like a macro level, like how is the scaling gonna work? Like are we gonna expect to be able to progress with our potentially better gear into higher levels of corruption, maybe? Like, like will average players be able to go higher than they did before? Like, how is the XP scaling going to work? How's the gold scaling going to work? Like, all these other things. Just like, how is all this new stuff going to scale into Endgame?
Yeah, I mean, they did mention it briefly about how they're making Aberoth the pinnacle boss, normal version of it, easier at the same time as they're providing more tools for us to increase power creep and power scaling for our characters. But at the same time, the majority of the player base they got to end game maps, but they didn't get to monoliths, right? The empowered monoliths. So I think that the end game changes that we've seen and what they've teased as well is going to be in a really nice spot to provide this. Let's call it meat because they felt very bare bone structured end game, which is very monotone and kind of boring. I think that's what deterred a lot of people. And now there's such a huge amount of content in the monoliths and customizations, like you said, with the Weaver's Touch, the Atlas Pass skill tree equivalent, allowing player agency to control the approach of it. I think those things are going to be very fun to engage with for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that, and we'll also hopefully have a bit of a more linear gear progression. Like another
Mm.
thing people complain about a lot is just when you get to endgame, the gear is kind of sparse with upgrades, right? Like, well, I guess eventually I'm gonna drop my 1 LP red ring and slam it, and then that's my upgrade. But until then, here we
Mm.
go, just slumming it, right? But like now you have all the set items, you could put the affect. Like there's a lot more steps towards your progression. I think might make it more palatable for people that don't have crazy amounts of playtime.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair take as well. Like you're providing incremental steps towards the end game gear. Like that's also why I think that you and I, being fans of COF, have a better excite or a higher excitement of that specifically. As in trade, you're like you'll use whatever gets you by till you can afford the big steps, the big end game piece. Basically, skipping the incremental steps before that. Which were kind of scarce, like you said, but now it feels like they're providing the tools that required to increase diversity in builds, but also provide these extra steps in terms of gearing and crafting so that people can feel like, hey, we can drop this and work on it and get an incremental upgrade before I get that red ring, right? So I think that's a pretty good way to
Yeah.
see it, actually. I like that. Like crafting in general is going to be very interesting. And They haven't added any new set items, and set items have been such a horrible, horrible implementation in the game. And then, Holly comes down from the goddamn top rope and be like, yo, we're gonna do this. And now everyone's super excited about set items. And now that you have the opportunity to start introducing new set items, because they have now they fulfill a purpose in the game. They have a role which they kind of didn't have before that, outside of like a couple of outlier builds like Lich's Scorn for minions, and I guess the Life Region Swarm Bug build back in the day.
Yeah, I think like removing the set from the base type that it's attached to kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. Like before, you're sort of stuck with sometimes bad bases, or even like a good base that's not necessarily what you want for your build. So yeah, it's a big upgrade.
No, for sure. I mean, something I really liked what they did. We talked about like incremental linear progression stages as well. Once they introduced the Forgotten Knights, and you got to the Empower Monoliths, the game basically gave you a quest saying, "Hey, you're gonna kill this boss at this kind of corruption level." And once you've done that, the game told you, "Well, your next goal is to kill this boss at this corruption level, and rinse repeat till you hit 300 corruption." Which is the game then told you, "Well, now you're gonna kill Abrath, right? And here's the big bad boy, right?" And I feel like that was something that was really, really fun to go through, because the game provided us with objectives and a straight goal or a path for us to take. So we had an objective to overcome, right, or a problem to overcome. And I think that with the Atlas passive skill tree, that's going to make the endgame mapping, sorry, the Weaver's tree, going to make that progression of mapping feel more rewarding, because you feel like you're progressing something instead of like trying to push up 100 corruption to 200 corruption instead. Which kind of goes in hand with what you mentioned as well before, with the whole incremental steps of gear progression. We have this in the end game maps as well. So I really hope that it's gonna hit the spot there, because like one of my biggest concerns with the last Epoch was obviously replayability of endgame, and then the second problem I had was performance related issues. And if they hit those two things, I really think last Epoch is gonna be, ending up being back on the map in the ARPG industry.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do think we had engine upgrades too, right?
Yes, that's part of the
Earlier
delay
this year.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should hopefully be good.
Hopefully, yeah. We'll see how they land it. Oh man, no, it's gonna be fun. It's very, very exciting. I do have to ask you about the Weaver's tree, though. You are aware that you can either disable arenas from existing, or you lean into it hard and say get these giga arenas. So the question would be: are you an arena fan or are you an arena hater like myself?
I mean, so far when I go and do my echoes, I usually like path around arenas, like even if it's like 3 extra node just to avoid them. They're
Yep.
so yeah, it's so tedious to do, and you get like no rewards out of it. So
Yep. No, I
uh,
agree. We're on the same page in that book. But I mean, we don't know how the big arena is gonna be. They might be super cool, right? And then we're gonna have to change our plans. Well, we'll see how
well,
it
the
turns.
uniques though, right? It's
Sorry,
got to be the way that you get arena uniques. Like that must be it.
I would assume as much. I obviously can't say anything, but no, I mean, yeah, I would assume as much. Yes, but we don't know. I mean, they do have a overlaying, or like overhang. What do you call it? They have a theme, an ongoing theme in the game to allow target farming to engage with certain types of content to get certain types of items. Like you want to farm that item, that's going to be in that monolith zone or that time zone. So it wouldn't surprise me that if they were to have arena specific loots to make that a target farmable content. Like if you want to have those specific items, then arenas is the way to go for that, or trade for them, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised with that. So what do you think about the Uber endgame bosses there? Do you think that's something that a lot of people will be engaging with, or do you think that's going to be like so far off in difficulty that very few people will even try to engage with it?
You're talking about Uberoth?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think already the amount of people who beat Aberoth is kind of on the low side. Like, especially if you look at like hardcore, right? Um, so yeah, I'm skeptical that we're gonna see a lot of people, especially like if the game is in a good balance state. Like right now, you have some outliers where if you want to kill Aberoth, right, you can just pick Static Orb and you can go full mana and you can kind of just blast it. Like if you want, if you just kill it, that's your goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If balance is better, I think that sort of thing might be harder, and people might have to fight the boss. I guess I'll say fairly, and that would make the number of people doing it even lower.
It's true. True. We'll see how they handle balancing. It's one of my questions in the interview is going to cover how they plan on handling meta shakeups and balancing in general and or mid-season patches, right? Because if they do similar to what PoE is doing, they try to avoid mid-season patches, and then they try to shake up meta by dropping down the outliers down and buffing some of the underused or underperforming skills up based of the amount of people playing XYZ. Or if they want, like D4 has been desperately trying for years to make everything have similar types of performance with a couple of outliers every season, where they want to have like the bottom line have everyone else gathers. They don't want anything to be super low or super high. They want everything within a certain parameter, right? So it all depends on how they want to tackle that. So I'm going to be asking that on Friday for sure. We'll see
Yeah,
how that
that's
goes.
definitely an important one.
Absolutely. Either way, I love the spreadsheet you sent me. This is fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure we post this. I'll be posting this on YouTube later, so I'll leave a link down. This is a big shout out to Frozen Sentinel made the spreadsheet, and well, it's not a spreadsheet; it's a shitload of spreadsheets. Good lord, there's so much in here. It's actually crazy. Holy shit! I can't get over it. You must have spent so
Yeah,
much time on it.
this is one of those things that like I see linked in the official Discord all the time, and it kind of feels good. You spend a lot of
Oh, of
time working on
course.
something, and then people actually like it. So
Yeah, I mean, if it's well made, I mean, this is. I remember like the good old starter days of PoE. Anyone in the community that delivered, good quality content or tools like this, for example, they got immediately praised for it and a lot of attention to it. And I think that this is definitely one of those situations. So, I mean, you seeing this being linked in the Reddit, that's just fantastic, and I hope it's going to continue because this looks really good. Like no one else has done this. I've never seen anything as extensive as this. This is crazy cool. That's really nice work,
yeah,
dude.
last
Sorry.
Epoch kind of like has a bit of a like there's not a whole lot of creators, so it kind of feels like there's people that just have the entire niches of the game to themselves.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put
Like
it.
Dread with his all his builds.
Yeah, it's a prime example. I mean, that's always going to like develop as well. I mean, with the current creators of Last Epoch, we have a handful of you guys that are mainly making content in Last Epoch, basically laying the foundation for the game, and that's why I wanted to be so adamant about getting you guys on for a talk, have a little conversation, see you guys, you know. Get a feeling for how you guys are interpreting the teasers and the announcement, and also make sure that if you guys have any questions, I wanted to make sure that you guys get the opportunity to get those in. So, like, I understand that the press tour they're running, obviously there's ROI questions involved and marketing being a heavy focus of it. So I get that, but I wanted to make sure that people like yourself, like I mean, providing the foundation of the game and tools like this, like I think that this needs to be shouted from the top of the mountain, right? So people get to hear it and see it because these things are so useful for the community to use as the game progresses, right?
Yeah.
Either way, let's do it very simple. How about you go through where we can find you, what content to expect from your content, and what your plans are for the launch?
Yeah,
Sell
sweet.
yourself, basically.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. If you YouTube COF Last Epoch, you'll probably see all my videos. But yeah, if you want to go on YouTube, I'm Frozen Sentinel. On Twitch, I'm also Frozen Sentinel. And yeah, if you want any sort of content around COF, I'm probably your guy. If you just have questions about how the game works or any sort of mechanics or anything like that, weird, super specific questions, I'm probably your guy. And yeah, I'll be hoping to go pretty hard on the launch, maybe party up with a team and do some blasting, figure stuff out. So yeah, should be a good time.
Awesome. And you stream occasionally? Or how much do you stream on Twitch? And are you making YouTube content?
Probably could stream more on Twitch, to be honest. Not a whole lot, but whenever these exciting things go on, I do throw the stream up. So definitely on launch we'll be streaming.
Fair enough. And there's Frozen Sentinel on Twitch and Frozen Sentinel on YouTube confirmed. Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate you stopping by for a little chit chat, and I'll, like I said, with the question as well, I'll make sure to get it in. I couldn't fit it in on a one of the topics. So I'll, in worst case scenario, I'll have it in the Q&A, and I'll start off with that question. It's kind of like my plan, because I'm also very curious about the MG versus CUF. But yeah, that's about it. I appreciate you taking the time, Frozen, and I'll leave a link to your content down below in the descriptions in the YouTube for those of you guys watching it on Twitch. I'll spam up the links for you guys here in a second, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Cheers.